The final things we'll talk about is how to make a vector according to rules and how to use MATLAB to plot data. You'll notice I still have video1.m open. I'm keeping it open to show you what happens when you make a second script. If I go now New, and I just click on the plus, what I end up with is a new script on a new tab. If I write stuff down in this script and hit Run, it'll run the script as currently active. I'm going to use a comment to explain what we're about to do. In MATLAB, comments are preceded by a %, not slashes. We want to plot y equals sine of t for t from 0 to 10. In C++, doing this would be very challenging, and we'd actually need to use for loops. Here, we don't. First, let me save. I'll call it SinePlotter. MATLAB allows us to construct a vector according to rules. Let's see what I mean by that. I want a vector that represents all of the times, starting at 0 and going to 10. Now let's say I want to plot the values of sine of t every 0.01 seconds. I can do that all in one line. T, my time vector, equals, use square brackets, although strictly speaking you don't have to, 0, and now I use a colon, 0.01, 10. We can read this as follows. T is a vector that begins at 0, ends at 10, and each new element is 0.01 greater than the last. Now I want the vector sine of t. Well, C++ had a function called sine. MATLAB does too, but it actually works on vectors as easily as on scalars. Y equals sine of t is perfectly acceptable. Now, do you remember when I said we should always keep the semicolon off when we're dealing with scripts? Let's not do that. Before I show you how to plot, let's take away the semicolon on y, and let's see what we get. If I run the script, I get a huge number of variables, in fact 1001, because that's how many elements are in my t vector. And this is all the data that corresponds to sine of t from 0 to 10. I really don't want that to see that, especially if my calculation is very long. So let's not. Let's make sure that semicolon is there. But now I want to see sine of t. I want to plot it. MATLAB has a function called plot. Plot takes in 2 arguments, and actually MATLAB is telling me what it takes. You can see there's also additional arguments I can use, but we're not going to worry about them too much in this course. So let's plot t versus y. The independent variable goes first in plot. So I type t, comma, y. I don't need a semicolon on plot, because plot won't output anything. But if you'd like to make sure that you're always consistent, go ahead and add a semicolon. What will happen when I run this is that MATLAB will produce a new figure that is the plot of sine of t against t itself. If I run it, it might take a little time. And MATLAB will now open up a figure window for me. Again, sometimes MATLAB takes a little bit of time to work. This is now the plot of sine of t. What's amazing about MATLAB is I was able to do in 3 lines what in C++ would take a very long time. First of all, we'd need to use for loops and arrays in order to set up our t and our y vector. But second, plotting in C++ is not a simple thing. You'd need to download many different libraries, or worse, write them yourself. It might take you a very long time to get that working. Whereas in MATLAB, it's just 3 lines of code. Good plots have titles and labels. So let's add a title and label to the x and the y-axis. Underneath where I have plot, I'm going to type the word title. And let's say I want to say it is the graph of sine of t. Graph of sine t. You'll notice something. In C++, a string was preceded by double quotes. In MATLAB, it's single quotes. Be careful of that. MATLAB and C++ are very different. If I want to label the x-axis, I use the command xlabel. And similarly, I have to give it a string. Time in seconds. To label the y-axis, I use ylabel. And this is sine of t. Let's run that again. Upon running that, I get a whole new figure. My title is Graph of Sine of t. It has time in seconds on the bottom, and sine of t going this way.